Hey, Aaron Rabinowitz here for Red Giant. Joey Shanks is a visual effects artist whose PBS Digital Studios series, Shanks Effects, covers practical visual effects techniques. His work has been critically acclaimed and shared repeatedly throughout the internet-verse, both from industry sources like The Hollywood Reporter and Fate the Black Hole Effect from Interstellar. So, in this episode of Red Giant TV, Joey is going to walk us through his visual effects process to show you how it was done.
Hey guys, my name is Joey Shanks, and I'm here to show you guys how I created my own version of the black hole from Interstellar using all in-camera elements, where I would then bring them into After Effects, do some compositing, throw in some Red Giant universe filters to create a very similar but unique looking rendition of the black hole. Now, I put out a video about a week ago for my web series Shanks Effects, which is produced by PBS Digital Studios, and that was a very quick and simple video, really trying to learn how the process really works. You're not going to get the amount of information you need to kind of realize how you're going to achieve this in creating this. So what this video is going to kind of entail is me kind of almost like a director's commentary of this video I made for my web series, where we're going to open up the footage, open up some After Effects comps, really break things down, how I then manipulated in post-production to eventually create what you see on your left here, which is the black hole that I created from scratch. Everything you see was captured in camera. It was then manipulated in post, but everything you see came from all in-camera elements. So we have our computers here, and we're going to dive right into it and just go through the process, open up comps, and just really break this thing down step by step, element by element, and so you guys can get a better understanding of how I achieved to create that black hole. So let's do it. Okay, so this first shot that you see here of this black hole is something that I created with this really cool substance called magnetic putty. Alright, so this is kind of what it looks like. It's a really strong spherical magnet, and this putty here has silver properties in it, and it doesn't really suck in the magnet. It's actually the magnet is sucking the putty around it. And what I did was angled it here, and then I just did some color correction on it, and I thought it turned out to look like a pretty good version of a black hole. This is an episode we shot about a year and a half ago, probably our most popular one. It was a Vimeo staff pick. It's got like 800,000 views on Vimeo and then like 300,000 on YouTube. That's another cool shot of it too. That is just to show you guys how that effect was created, even though it doesn't really pertain to what we're doing here, but that's the opening shot, so at least try to explain everything to you guys. As you can see, the most accurate simulation ever of what a black hole would look like. And there's this really great featurette on Interstellar and how they created the mathematical equations and formulas for the black hole. Astrophysicist Kip Thorne wrote equations and formulas on what a black hole would look like if we were ever to see one, and technically this is the most accurate one that's ever been seen for a major Hollywood movie. From the film, boom. So that's what it looks like. And if you've seen the film yet, it's really impressive, and it looks incredible on a huge IMAX screen, and it's absolutely gorgeous. That is what we came up with. Done all in camera, and like I said, we just manipulated the in-camera elements in post with After Effects, and those elements into like 2 seconds, but we're going to be going over tons of those elements. So I even created my own little base model of the black hole, and I used light painting elements for this where I traced it, and I used some of that stuff, but this is really more of just me to get an idea of the scale of it, and it helps me. You just have a better idea of what you're trying to create. These are like Hot Wheel racetracks here with this crazy planet I made for one of my past films. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into capturing our elements. I like to use Dragon Frame software, which is usually made for stop motion animation. Opening up this program allows me, when I take the picture, I can view it. Like this was the first picture I took that day. And I can really zoom in, check it out. Because sometimes you can't really tell if the image is going to work or not when you're seeing it just through that little screen. This software, you can download a free trial, and it works just the same as the regular version. The only thing is you can only do up to good. And the first thing we're going to capture is the thin inner ring that makes up the black hole. I used a styrofoam planet that I'd had lying around from the past film, and I lined up a can light, a circular can light, about 3 to 4 feet away, where I wanted to create a nice thin rim light around the planet and use for the center core of the black hole. I think this is the one we went with, and we took that into After Effects. We used this section and we duplicated it. Looking at the reference of the one from Interstellar, it was a very crisp, thin inner circle, and this crescent moon area right here wouldn't match what we were going for. So you can see that's a pretty thin inner ring here. Made a mask, and I masked out this area, duplicated it, rotate, set the blending mode to add. Then I would take another element and duplicate it and then put it around there until I got this right here. You can see there's some edges here, and but that's okay. I kind of that randomness of these kind of little particles and these little light elements are okay. So our core center element is good to go. So we're gonna select all, and we're gonna pre-compose it. I'm gonna call it our core center. Okay. And the first thing really what you want to do is create your atmosphere. The atmosphere, I wanted to use an orb, shine a light through it, because I knew I was going to kind of mat it out with our thin, where's that at? Our thin ring element. We were going to mat it on top of that. So we just need this nice natural glow around it. So I got my fog machine out, and I filled the room up with fog, took some more shots, and let's see which one was the winner. Now you see these are a little softer, but you can definitely see that haze there. A little too much. I think this was the winner right here. So, got some really nice atmospheric feel to it. You can see the door, I'm not sure if you guys, a little bit right here, but we're going to throw some blurs on that and blur that out, and you can even see the stand right here, but we're going to go ahead and blur this out. But this is really the central piece, this atmospheric back. We captured this one, and let's see my settings real quick, just so you can see what it was taken at. So I was at f22, and it was a 4-second exposure. And I had a neutral density filter on my Tokina, or my Canon wide-angle lens, and I was at 17 millimeter. Now I did a few different passes. I did one with more of a cooler feel, more blue, and this is good to keep around if you wanted to do some color correcting after the fact. You could apply like an adjustment filter, a blending mode on it, where this would then add some blue to your shot if you wanted to try to change the hue a little bit without using a actual color filter, if you wanted to keep it pure like we have been doing. We got that here, so what we're going to do is bring in our composition we just made, make a mask of it, ellipse, and alright, that looks pretty good. Now unsolo it, and we're just going to scale this guy down, try to position it, so we want it just to be covering pretty much the whole sphere that is illuminated. Let's feather it, maybe subtract the mask a little, and let's just fine tune it. So that is our black hole, and we'll turn on. it's pretty good. Now what we have here is, as you can see, this table here, the stand. So what we're going to have to do is our atmosphere. So let's name it first. Atmosphere blur. I'm just going to use like a fast blur on it. Let's feather it. There we go. And you see our door over here. Kind of see a little bit there. So let's make another filter, and that should be blurred as well. And there we go. So we're starting to get somewhere. Now it just looks like there's this big black ball out in an environment that's not in my shed. And like even all these little particles and stuff like that, that's just stuff you can't simulate. Well, you can simulate it, but the unpredictable stuff of shooting in camera, it creates all these little speckles of goodness that I think just really work. There's something from the shed, I don't know what it is, but I like all of these little artifacts and particles. And there's some banding going on here, but we're going to fix that later with some filters. So those are our two elements, our inner ring and then our atmosphere combined into one. So we're going to pre-compose this, and we're going to move on to creating our outer ring elements of our black hole. Now this section right here with the moon and the steel wool with the fan creating these circular light streaks, I kind of messed with the order a little bit because I thought this segment was kind of interesting and visually striking, so I kind of moved it in front of some elements that would normally go first. So these elements really go towards the end where they are going to layer underneath our almost finished composite to add a nice glow element to it. So really and truly what we do next is create our circular ring elements, and that's what we're going to do. I started playing around with long exposures and shooting a flashlight at reflective items like a disco ball or prisms, glass orbs that I have, even those glass spheres that I was using. I would shine it at that, so it's not a direct beam at the camera, but it created really interesting light streaks that I would then use later to create the ring elements. I turn it into a 3D layer. I could manipulate it, turn the axis so it's more elongated and skew it a little bit, and that kind of stuff worked out great. I really didn't anticipate it to get my ring elements using long exposure techniques. Like, it's not very soft right here, but it's softer here, so I would go in After Effects, crop this part, and use these elements, which are just work really well. You can morph them, and you wouldn't know that you were kind of degrading the quality of it. It all worked. You could do really whatever you wanted with these images. This one was actually with that model, black hole model I made, so you can kind of definitely see the curvature here, and I think I used that one. And even if, you can see other things in the shot, like, you just crop this out, and no one will ever know. And I tried it with, different lights. Really cool effect, but it doesn't really work for what we're going for. The edges are too crisp. It's not soft enough. Take a look at the center ring element here. Looks to be about 19 separate images used, bits and pieces. Really just minute ones, all put together to create this ring. The one in Interstellar isn't as round, and this was actually a choice I made. So ours would be a little bit different and have its own look and feel. Even kind of these kind of dust kind of elements where it looks kind of like particles, even really kind of matched well of the Interstellar. Our top ring here, a lot of softer elements. It looks like this one had 12 different images used, so it doesn't really look like much. Almost looks kind of like hair. But when we composite it all together, adding our center ring, our center core, our atmosphere, it doesn't really come to life until you really add that backdrop. Now we're going to incorporate our top to bottom rings. And this is an image of the black hole they came up with without any effects put onto it. This is kind of the render without any So that's with filters. You still see the lines, but you kind of, you don't notice the detail as much. Okay, so like I said, see these lines here? And then I noticed that these kind of look similar to those. So I snapped off a few more. That's a pretty good one. I was gonna use these, and I wish the lines were a little more symmetrical, but these elements look very similar to these. Like that, that's nice. Yeah, there we go. See, looks pretty similar. Yeah, that's very nice. And that's just the inner kind of snoot of the can light I was using. Let's go into the top part is wider because it's coming off and going outwards, and the bottom ring is going towards this thin center core. And the top rings here is made up of 3 different elements. Now, I didn't even touch this photo. You can see the planet there. So I just scaled it down a little bit. That was the normal size, and I scaled it down, and I rotated it. We added a secondary one where I distorted it a little bit. It needed to be wider, so I just kind of pulled it out a little bit until it kind of matched up nicely with the lower ring element. Now we needed to create this bottom element, which needed to be skinnier. So we had them touching here, and it really is similar to what the interstellar black hole was for the consistency of the rings. I think it worked well. So we can break down what we've got so far. Alright, so first we got our center core right there. And also I added this extra little streak here because if you see in the image here, this bottom ring here actually ends up going out towards the very thin center ring. I just masked 2 different elements here as kind of a bridge to connect that lower ring to the center core. Then we made our atmospheric plate. We then made our center ring element with our light streaks. And we almost by accident. And then we added our secondary rings on the top and our secondary rings on the bottom. And it's starting to come together. I think we need a few more elements here. I think we need to add some stars and add some additional cosmic elements. So let's go through that process. Okay, so how I created my cosmic elements and my star. I'm going to try to just keep it simple, maybe give you guys a few pointers so you guys can just experiment and try it out for yourselves, because that's the only way you're really going to learn. This is a piece of glass. I used some basic light stands with some super clamps. No one ever notices this cosmic background I composited into the shot. Your eyes kind of trained directly towards the glass, and no one ever notices that, and it's one of my favorite composites I've ever done. And you're going to want a very directional main source light that you're going to angle just right eye level with the glass, where it's just going to skim right across the top, and you'll even be able to see all the little dust particles being illuminated on the glass, and those dust particles are actually going to look like stars, hopefully. I'm hitting that surface, and you can kind of see the little dust particles. Now a C-stand or some sort of tripod that you can go straight over your subject and look directly down. And you're going to want sandbags if you do have a C-stand, because you don't want your camera tipping over. I find that just having an extra light source brings out a lot of the shadows from all the other little elements on the glass. It's good to have a few extra lights here and there, because you just got to go with the rhythm and feel it out and just work your lights around and find a good spot, because I can never predict what I'm actually going to create. And I get my assortment of liquids there. As you can see, I'm starting to squirt liquids onto the glass surface. And it's a lot of condensed milk with a little bit of food coloring. You're going to want to hit it every now and then with hydrogen peroxide, and it's going to create kind of a reaction where it's going to push a lot of the liquids apart from each other. And it's going to be so minor and so minute that you might not even be able to tell by looking at it. What I do is I do time-lapse photography where I have an intervalometer. I have it set where it takes like a picture every second. I shoot some hydrogen peroxide and I kind of see the reaction happening. and then I kind of just walk away for 5-10 minutes, and I come back, and then I import the footage. And like this is probably over 10 minutes, this reaction right here. And just be careful about mixing, alcohol, and don't be bringing bleach in, making mustard gas or anything like that. So simple water-based stuff works just fine. And this is kind of how I created a lot of the star elements for our starfield plate. I would mask out the stars. So what I would do was pretty much just make a spherical mask around the stars to get rid of all of this liquid here. And that would be a portion of the starfield. This was another still I used where I cropped this out. I used all of these elements here for the stars. I probably should have wiped this off right here. And I even think you can see this in the finished composite. Like I said, I kind of like the imperfections. And they also twinkle too. And that's a key thing. You gotta have some twinkle in them. And it's a natural twinkle, believe it or not. I haven't even done much like color correction with these. Let's do some looks on it. So you can really take away colors. You change the whole look around with all these different color settings if you wanted to. It does get a little messy though, but that's practical effects for you. We have our composite here. And there's 3 different elements going on. This green top area, that's one cosmic element. There's a star backdrop I made right here. And then there's another one right here as the black hole's kind of sucking in these little star particles. Like you see this one thing coming like... Just stuff like that. It looks like it's like a little mini, like it's a super wide shot, and that's like the Endurance from Interstellar, like going right at it. It's crazy. In a nutshell, that's how I kind of created the starfields. And I also am teaching a course on how I created this. It's going to be like... Okay, so we're in After Effects now, and this is what it looks like with all of our elements put together. No filters yet, just all of the elements. All in all, there it looks like there's 13 different layers, and I pre-composed them, then exported them, so it would be a little quicker. We're going to go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. So we're going to apply 3 different universe filters on this. We're going to use the universe hollow matrix filter, which is really good for creating like hologram distortion lines and stuff like that, but we're going to actually just use kind of the glow element of it. See what I mean? We don't need it to look like that, but that looks kind of cool actually. Make our effect scale 14 or so, and make sure the frame rate is 24. It's just a good practice to match whatever your frame rate is for your comp. And we're going to blend this with the original 70%, because we don't need too much. Alright, so we got that going there. And we're going to open up our effects here, and we're going to uncheck a lot of things. We're going to check everything but our color and brightness settings. And now, let's just turn this off and on real quick. So it adds a nice, really nice glow to it. And that really helps sell the effect, just that one little filter there. And we could even throw kind of like a wiggle option for the exposure or brightness, so it has kind of a pulsating look and feel to it if we wanted to. But for right now, that's pretty good. So we're going to add another universe filter. We're going to use the carousel. And these are really cool. We're kind of using just the certain elements of these filters, which is why these filters are so great, because you have a lot of options. Turn this off. So that just adds a little bit more atmosphere to the shot. Now we're going to go to our light leak. We're going to make this light style edge large. And I brought the opacity down a little bit. Flicker strength 50. So yeah, this is going to add a little bit of some edge elements where you feel maybe like there's another sun, or there's some kind of solar flares that are coming, like hitting the edge of the camera. Just adds a little bit more life and energy to it. So let's change the color to match more of our orange in the shot. So that's just with the carousel. That's with the hollow matrix. Okay, and then we're going to use one more universe filter. We're going to use the masked blur filter and the universe blur. Change a few settings here. We're going to change this to 25, the blur size. Let's bring the radius down a little bit. Now you can see that really takes a lot of that orange out of the shot. We don't want all of that orange lost. So what we're going to do with our adjustment layer here is we're going to change the blending mode to screen. And there, that brings our orange back, but it doesn't make it too overwhelming. So I think all three really do a good job in helping enhance the shot. So hollow matrix, carousel, and set it to like 35 for opacity. So it just pulls it off just a little bit. So that is how I achieved our still singular image of the black hole. So let's now turn these into 3D layers. So for right now, I'm just going to turn off those adjustments I made. Turn all of these layers into 3D layers by clicking this box here. And we need to make a new camera. We're going to set it to 24 millimeter. Bring the size of our comp down because we're making this a video clip now. So we're going to make it 1920 by 1080. 24 frames a second. And you see how much zoomed in it is now, but that's okay. We have our elements here, and what we need to do is decide where in Z-space we want everything. So first, we're going to change our view to two views, so we have our view from the top and then our actual camera view. I'm just going to set a keyframe for everything here, and I'm going to go to the very end and set a keyframe because I'm going to be doing some changes here and make camera moves, so that's kind of what I do. I always just set my keyframes right to start out with. Okay, so our point of interest. So right here, that's our Z-space. You see it moved a little bit there. We want to have this nice, pretty far back in Z-space. Now let's turn it back onto our active camera. And let's scale everything down for right now so it fits in our comp, and then we'll then rework everything. So hit S for scale. We want to get it as far zoomed out as we can without it losing anything on the corners. So that looks good at 41. Okay, now let's take our star field and move it back in Z-space because these stars are thousands of light years away. If we don't know where it is, we can hit our camera so we can figure out where we need to take it to. Okay, so that works. So let's turn our regular active camera back on. You see how much smaller that got? So let's now scale it back up so it fits just barely in there because we're not going to be pulling out any more than this. We're going to be zooming in. So everything else is going to be roughly in this area here, this box. Everything else is going to exist kind of here, and these stars are all the way back there. So figure out what we want to exist on the same plane. So I think we want center core, the bridge, the planet blur, all to exist on the same plane. Actually, we're going to leave that the same because that's right in the center, and that's kind of our center core. So we'll leave all of those guys the same. And then let's do our top rings and bottom rings, and I want these a little further away. So we're going to pull it maybe to like right there. So let's go back to our active camera. Our atmosphere will be this extra little center ring element. We're going to move it up just a little bit, and as well as the center ring particles. But these are going to vary a little bit. They're not going to be just the same. We have that like right here, and maybe let's pull up that other element, can maybe come up a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think our top and bottom rings need to be further back actually. And let's check these out, and then we're going to scale it back up so it'll match. So there they are. And now what we're going to do is add a camera move to them. And let's play this back and see what it looks like, just by doing a nice, just simple push in. So you can even see that there's some separation here with those particles. And what we can do here is we're going to add another universe filter. We're going to go to distort ripples. What I did here was I kind of just added a little bit of extra movement where I increased the frequency and the phase of the ripples. And I just threw this on really quick, so I'm sure with some fine tuning we can make it look even better. It looks like kind of the black hole sucking those back in. So that looks pretty cool. If you were happy with this, you would render it out, export it, bring it back in, then do your adjustment layers. Because this will take a lot longer to render with all of these layers enabled. And that's looking pretty good. A lot more energy, and what I probably would do later is maybe go grab your core center layer and throw kind of another animation preset on it so it has a little bit of variation and glow and looks like it's kind of pulsating. So I would add a lot of those elements into it. So that was quite an in-depth walkthrough on how I created this shot. I'm pretty satisfied with what we were able to accomplish here. If you guys haven't seen the quick version of this video, you guys should check it out. Please shoot us any suggestions, comments, thoughts, opinions, suggestions. We'd love to hear it all. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you around cyberspace, and hope to see some really cool looking nebula, black hole visual effects out there. And thanks to Red Giant for having me do this tutorial. It was quite an honor, and I've been using their filters ever since I got my Panasonic DVX 100B way back in '05.
silence. The last words from African-American Eric Garner have become a catch cry after a grand jury decided not to charge a white New York police officer over his death. I can't breathe! I can't breathe! While protests over the so-called chokehold swept the United States, this latest demonstration of America's simmering racial tensions making headlines. Newspapers around the world, meanwhile, featured headlines which didn't mince words. An opinion piece in British tabloid The Guardian read, "The real problem in Ferguson, New York and all of America is institutional racism. From Belgium to Brazil, Ireland and South Africa, it is a story that is resonating, but more often than not, in the back pages." Well, there was more groundswell support on social media. Hashtag Eric Garner, hashtag I Can't Breathe, and hashtag Black Lives Matter lit up the Twitter sphere. And looking more closely at the numbers, there were more than 1 million tweets in the hours that followed that grand jury decision. Now, if you compare that to the reaction over the decision in Ferguson last month, not to indict police officer Darren Wilson over the shooting of Michael Brown, well, there were more than 3 million people which took to Twitter. The majority were from the United States, where the anger continues to spill over. In the meantime, the world watches. Isa Suarez, CNN, London.
Phil, of course, this decision, this ruling had people up in arms. Now the Department of Justice is proceeding with a civil rights investigation as well in Garner's death. Can you give us the latest on that?
So what we know, basically, Scarlett, right now, obviously the grand jury decided not to indict the police officer up in New York. But what happens in these types of cases, and you've seen it with the Trayvon Martin shooting down in Florida, you've seen it in Ferguson with the shooting of Michael Brown, and now with the Eric Garner death, is the Justice Department keeps a very close eye on these types of situations, specifically the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department. What Eric Holder announced 2 days ago is that the Justice Department will now start a full-blown probe into this, into the killing of Eric Garner through prosecutors. But Scarlett, with all these protests going on, I think what I hear regularly from Justice Department officials is be patient. We've got something going on right now, and there's a chance charges could actually come.
And Phil, there's a Washington story here too, which is that the prosecutor that's picking this up will be Loretta Lynch, who is the White House's pick for the Department of Justice. What do we expect her to do in this investigation?
So it's an interesting situation. So there's been a couple of different kind of angles to look at it. One, is this going to have any impact on her confirmation hearings? Two, is this going to have any impact on her ability to oversee the oversight capacity? Odds are, and these keep in mind kind of on this track, Brendan, the Trayvon Martin federal investigation is still ongoing. So by the time this investigation actually comes to a conclusion, Loretta Lynch will likely be the Attorney General of the United States, won't be in that position anymore. Now, on the confirmation side of things, I spoke to some congressional aides last night, what they thought about it. Kind of a key point, this is an ongoing investigation, so if this comes up during her hearings, she actually can't talk about it. So it shouldn't have any impact there at all. So I think there's a couple ways to look at it. It's an interesting wrinkle, but it probably won't have any major impact because of the length of these investigations.
Okay, that's good to know. Phil, I wonder what the upshot is from the president's meeting with cabinet members in recent days following the grand jury decision in Ferguson.
I think, Scott, what was actually interesting, on that same day, he met with law enforcement, with civil rights, with some of the protesters from down in Ferguson. And what we heard really is that he's serious about trying to pursue change in these last 2 years. Everybody talks about a lame duck president. What can you actually get done? This is an area, one that I think has a lot of personal meaning to the president and a number of his cabinet officials, that he's going to push forward. You saw they've already allocated $75 million for cameras, chest cameras for police to wear. You've seen that with some of the militarized equipment the police departments are doing, the administration's reviewing that. I think they're trying to figure out ways to go through and actually get something done here where there's so many other options provisions that just aren't coming through.
Within the getting something done and going into the weekend, Phil, is this the same old debate in Washington across a massive political divide, or is there something different about blacks and whites in America that could actually bring Washington together?
Ferguson was about as polarizing as you could possibly get. If you listened to lawmakers, if you watched on social media, if you watched on cable news, it was a Republican-Democrat split on what should have happened to Darren Wilson. And look, that was very frustrating. I think it was kind of disconcerting to watch. Eric Garner's different. I think when you listen to lawmakers on Capitol Hill yesterday, it was on video, it was so vivid when you watched it. It struck both sides. It was not an issue of party. It was not one side coming down on the other side. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisles think there should be hearings. Prominent conservatives, Charles Krautheimer yesterday, obviously the columnist for the Washington Post, made very clear that there's a potential for federal charges here. Look, there's support on the Republican side for Eric Holder pursuing a federal investigation. That's when you know that this is a confluence right now, Tom.
I expected the grand jury to also look at the evidence from the officer, Danielle Pantaleo. Look at his evidence and his record, okay, and hold him accountable for his wrongdoing, not only with Eric Garner, but in the past. And they didn't because he's an officer.
No racist.
I've known Eric probably 32 years old, probably since I was 16. I cried the minute I heard the news because I almost feel helpless. I feel like we could protest, we could boycott, but they just don't seem to care. And I don't know how to get them to change, to open their hearts, to have empathy, to see that this is injustice.
The man said multiple times, "I cannot breathe." You know, it's against their rules to use a chokehold on someone. So, and then for that guy and the grand jury to not indict him, you know, it's very upsetting. What's really important, you know, is protesting peacefully. In Ferguson, they let them burn places down. This is not the right way to go. We have to hit them where it hurts. You know, we have to bring our own politicians to the mix. We have to vote. When they know we have a voice, they're gonna attend to us.
We have decided that we are going to be persistent. We're going to be loud. We're not going to let our voices be stilled or silenced.
First of all, you speak to people. Wow.
type leraar dat houdt van orde en structuur. En ik ben gewoon orde en structuur aan te bieden.
A ver, quiero yo te saco una foto. ¿Dónde quiero venir? Pues ponete bien acá. Por favor. Pero ven y ponete adelante. ¿Qué es eso, che? Mira. Ahí adelante, boludo, abajo la luz. No es un peso, mira eso. ¿Qué mierda? Mira. Qué chiquito, mira. No me muevas, pues. Mira que estoy muy bien. Vamos a la mierda. Vamos para otro lado, no sé. Toma firma vos que yo me voy a la mierda.
Pese a que no es clara la imagen, en su audio se puede escuchar claramente a un ser que podría no pertenecer a este mundo. ¿De dónde proviene este extraño ser? ¿Podrán escapar a las consecuencias de su encuentro con lo desconocido?
What the hell, man? I'm getting out of here. This is fucking. What the fuck? What the fuck is that, man? What the fuck is that? Oh, fuck, it's too dark, man. ¿Allá? ¿Allá? ¿Qué pico un gorro? Parece, mira, boludo. Qué chote ese, boludo. Mira, qué chote. Oh my god!
years old. I was born in England, but I carry American citizenship and have lived in America for most of my life. It's now been well over a year since I was kidnapped in Senna. Basically, I'm looking for any help that can get me out of this situation. I'm certain that my life is in danger. So, as I sit here now, I ask, if anything can be done, please let it be done.